Hi, this is Krant Patnaik and I'm going to teach you today about some of the few lessons on Photoshop. So when I speak about Photoshop today, yes, we were been learning about the introduction yesterday. When I speak about introduction, yes, we were been learning about so many things, you know. First, we were been learning about what is Photoshop, Photoshop ante enti, how many uses of Photoshop are there, and what is basically Photoshop used for is what we were been learning. So today we are going to be learning about the menu bar of the Photoshop. Ante menu lo untai Photoshop lo. That is what we are going to learn today. So whenever I tell you to use the Photoshop, yesterday as well I have been telling you about the shortcuts of Photoshop. So today we'll be going with the menu bar and as well as the interior usage of the menu bar. Let's go with the file and then edit and then the more options in the menu bar. So let us catch up with the Photoshop. All right. So now let us see here the interface of Photoshop. If you can see the interface of the Photoshop, we have a file. If you can see the interface here, we have a file. Okay, so before we go ahead and speak about the menu bar, you know, what are the options that we have in the menu bar is also very important. So whenever I speak about the menu bar, we have so many things like, you know, file, edit, image, layer, select, filter, view, window, and help. So these are the few options that we have in the menu bar. So whenever I speak about the menu bar, guys, yes, we have been learning about so many things. You know, for example, if you can see, if you want to save the file, before we go ahead with the menu bar, as well, I just want to tell you some of the basics of the Photoshop because, before I go ahead and speak about the menu bar, I also want you to know about what are the uses of Photoshop. Okay. So the uses of Photoshop are very simple, you know, as I always been telling you about these. One is editing the image and other one is creating an image. So whenever I speak about editing and creating an object or whenever I speak about the Photoshop, all these is just very simple. It's just that we have to concentrate more on, you know, editing and then creating the image. So let us talk today about the Photoshop and what are the main uses of the Photoshop. So whenever I speak about the uses of Photoshop, guys, Photoshop is one of the best thing in the market that you can choose your career for the digital media. So digital media is one of the best things, you know, as far we know right now in the market there is Photoshop CS10 which is running, but most of the people actually work on Photoshop 7.0, which is a regular used Photoshop thing, which is a regularly used Photoshop one. So from today we are going to learn a few of the internal infras of the Photoshop, and as well we are going to continue learning them more. Okay, so that's great, you know, that's really great about you people listening to the Photoshop classes for a while. But yes, we have so many options in the Photoshop. For example, if you go to a marriage, you know, you people are going to click so many images, you know, you're going to click so many images, and as well you are going to you also going to edit things, you know, you actually going to edit the image. So all these are few of the options that we have in the Photoshop. So yes, of course, you know what, whenever I speak about the Photoshop, you know, as well you have a career in editing. For example, one of my friend actually was there in a college level, and he used to do a lot of pamphlet designing and contrast designing for the college works, you know, all the poster designs and everything. So this is what this is what my friend used to do, and he used to learn. I mean, he used to learn through self. You know, he used to just work on Photoshop, and then he used to just earn through the college perspective. So this is what basically we are going to help. I mean, this is what it's basically going to help. So whenever I speak about whenever I speak about the Photoshop, this is the most important thing that you have to remember while we are actually continuing doing the Photoshop, right? So these are a few of the careers of the Photoshop works. And yes, of course, whenever I speak about the main spectrum of Photoshop, we have something called as few segmentations of Photoshop. For example, exporting the image, importing the image, and as well the the updation of the Photoshop. For example, you have something called as PSD files. Okay, there'll be so many PSD files which will be given to you on editing, and you will be basically working on the editing of the thing. So these are all a kind of helpful things for you to work on Photoshop. As well, we also have two options called working on PSD, and as well working on JPEG, as well working on a few important things like if you can see, we have working on Java updates in the Photoshop as well. So many people even develop a web page in the Photoshop. That's also something which I wanted to tell you always. So these are the few options that you have while I speak about the Photoshop. I speak about the Photoshop. So yes, we basically are about to learn today about the menu bar, but because of few technical problems, we are not able to display the particular thing onto the screen. But still, we are going to learn orally today. We have something called as file menu. File, I want everybody to note it down, because file menu is something which helps you guys in understanding what are the basic options that we can use in the Photoshop. అంటే ఇప్పుడు మనం ఫోటోషాప్ ఓపెన్ చేసినప్పటి నుంచి క్లోజ్ చేసేంత వరకు ఏ ట్యాబ్లో ఎక్కువ మనం పని చేస్తామంటే ఫైల్ ట్యాబ్, దట్ ఈస్ ఇన్ ద మెనూ బార్లో ఫైల్ అనేది ఫస్ట్ ఉంటుంది. సో in the file we have something called as new, open, save as, and so many options. These are all the options. These are all the few options we got in editing the Photoshop things. So these are all few of the categories that we can work on when it says Photoshop. So yes, we have so many options, like working on file. When I speak about file, yes, if you want to take a printout, yes, of course, file is a amazing menu bar that we have on that. And as well, whenever I speak about opening a new one, for example, if you want to open a new tab, or if you want to work on a new tab, or if you want to go ahead and work on a new file, all these are just the basic options that you have in the Photoshop. So these are all the basic things always to remember in the Photoshop. So yes, Photoshop is one of the best things to work as of now in the on CS10. CS10 have more of improvements like transactions. I mean, you can easily minimize and maximize the tabs, and as well we have a good interface. It means you have an amazing colorful interface in CS10. But when it comes to 7.0, the tab is very well like an old tab. You can find an old tab. It's not like a new one. But yes, of course, everybody loves to work on 7.0 because everybody learns on 7.0, because 7.0 have the operations from the basic to the last. So all these are one of the best things that you should remember whenever I speak about the Photoshop. All right. So yes, orally we were been learning about Photoshop today as well. I just want to let you know about what are the few things that we have on the menu as on the file. All right. So in the file we have something called as the first one, open a new tab, and the shortcut for that is Ctrl+N. And the second tab, I mean in the menu bar in the file, we have two things. One was menu, and when I come to the menu in file, the first one is Ctrl+N, that is to open a new tab, and the second one is opening opening an image. I mean, if you want to open an image, we'll be basically putting Ctrl+O. You will be giving Ctrl+O. When you put Ctrl+O, obviously you can import an image. So to open an image, Ctrl+N. I mean, to open a tab, it is Control plus N. To open an image, it is Control plus O. So these are the two main options that you have to remember, because obviously Photoshop is all about editing and creating an image. So these is one of the best things that you can learn and you can implement in the Photoshop as well every time. Right. So as well also we have something called as the save options. Guys, whenever you save the Photoshop, always remember, whenever you're saving, there are two things to save. Like, you know, one, you can save as a PSD file. PSD file is nothing but the work file of the Photoshop. You can continue the same work file by importing the same PSD. For example, I have worked on 7.0 and I have saved the file as PSD. So tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I can carry the PSD file to anywhere and then put into 7.0 and import the PSD file and start working on Photoshop as well. So these are few of the best options that we have every time in the Photoshop to continue working with. And then also we have a few more options, you know, few more options like print options, you have create options, and so many. So these are the few things that we have in the Photoshop. So as well, you know, whenever I speak about the Photoshop menu bar is mainly known for its external features as well. When I speak about the external features of the Photoshop, we have something called as high-end features. Like high-end features, for example, you can also do that picture animations and GIF. You know, GIFs are very famous. If you open Facebook, everywhere you can find the trolls on GIFs, right? So GIF files are also available. I mean, it's not available. You can create a GIF file. You know, the stars popping out, and you know, anybody just winking their eyes, and all this and all these you can make in the Photoshop. So this is what you always have to remember whenever I speak about the Photoshop. As well, Photoshop is one of the best options that we have in current generation, because if we compare this with the other softwares, for example, we have CorelDRAW, we have you have Illustrator, you have so many softwares. You know, there is something called as PixArt, there is something called as LensArt, there is something called as so many. Right now, if you see in the market, we have so many editing softwares, but among all, the best one in the market right now you have is all time. It's not now, every time. Photoshop is the best one to edit something. So these are the oral things that we have been learning in the Photoshop, and as well as we are also been talking about what are the careers that we have in the Photoshop. So I haven't explained you about the careers that we have in the Photoshop. So there are 4 kinds of careers in the Photoshop. 1, digital advertisement. 2, totally into education. For example, what am I doing? For example, if I have learned Photoshop, I can teach few people. So you can also go into the educational department. And the third one is university sectors. For example, once you enter into the university sectors, what will happen? You basically are going to create a question paper or a poster for the college or a university. It's all again digital media in the university. So when I speak about digital media, yes, obviously we have serials, we have movies, we have so many things, not one, not two, we have so many. Every time this thing happens, right? And the second one, whenever I speak about, we have as I was been talking about, we have so many into editings. You know, for example, if you want to edit a poster or if you want to display the poster into the market, yes, obviously you can use that as well. And the third one I was talking about is the university based work. I mean, you will be working for universities and you will be amazingly doing it. So the second one is obviously the university thing. The second one is obviously something called as teaching. You know, for example, if you learn Photoshop very well, you have an amazing career in teaching. That means so many people open so many people open industries, so many people opens their own businesses and everything, so you can basically teach them as well. So I was talking about the 4 careers in the Photoshop. The first one is digital media, the second one is educational department, and the third one is university level, and the fourth one that we always have is the fourth one, which is very important, self business. That is what we see on the roads. Every now and then we have Photoshop, actual Photoshops. We walk into the shops and they take a picture of yours, and then you get the passport size photos, right? This is all. If you just have to buy a camera, click a picture of a person, and then print out. So these are all few options that we have in the Photoshop. So yes, this is what this is what we have on the careers of the Photoshop, which is very important and which is very helpful for you people to understand what is exactly the Photoshop. So yes, of course, when I speak about the Photoshop, we have learned about what is Photoshop. We also have learned about the careers of the Photoshop, and we also have learned about what is the first one, menu bar. In that we have the file, and also we have been learning about the surface interface of the Photoshop. So all these are one thing that we have been learning orally today, but that's okay. Though we have some technical error, we are supposed to do it like this orally. Okay, so apologies for this. So probably I will show you once we get the Photoshop onto the screen. Okay, but still, when somebody have any doubts regarding Photoshop, you can basically do a research on the Photoshop using the Photoshop. That is the best part of the Photoshop, in fact. For example, if you have a problem in CorelDRAW, CorelDRAW is all about fashion designing. Every person uses CorelDRAW for in the fashion designing, because you can basically measure on how much you want to put the quantity of the dress and everything. So this is what is basically done in the Photoshop. So yes, whenever I speak about the Photoshop and the uses of interfaces of the Photoshop, this is the most important thing, because comparatively to the other softwares, this software is the best thing to work on with. So yes, that's really great that we are talking about Photoshop and its user interfaces. But yes, of course, we do have so many things called as the uses of Photoshop internally. The tools are one of the most important things, because when it comes to the tools, few tools, whenever we talk about the tools, few tools like pen tool and Polo tool and polygon and lasso tools, all these tools help us in getting the best out of the best in all the prospects of working. So this is what I always want to tell you whenever we are working with the Photoshop. Yeah, and yes, of course, whenever I speak about the tools, I actually forgot to say we have foregrounds and backgrounds that you have to work on every time, because whenever I speak about foreground, when you are working on the foreground interface of the Photoshop, you always have to switch the foreground and the background. I'll show you once we get the Photoshop work as well. So this is one of the most important things that you have to remember every time in the Photoshop. So yes, so as well, the Photoshop is one of the useful things. Photoshop is not only helpful for editing, it is also useful for giving a social help for the media as well. For example, you're working in a media and you want to launch a poster regarding one of the entertainment program that is about to be launched. So what you're going to do, you work on the Photoshop, and as well you can launch it in the market. So all these are vice versa things. It's all business that we do. But Photoshop is helpful every time. It's not about one, it's not about two, it will be helpful everywhere. For example, tomorrow if you are getting married, you yourself can edit the pictures of yourself. So this is one of the best things that we can use for ourselves in the Photoshop. So yes, we have been learning about the Photoshop, and we have been speaking about the Photoshop orally, but as well Photoshop can also help you out in understanding when we have it on the screen. When we are working on the screen and we have things working on all this, we can basically work on the Photoshop. So this is what we have learned today, and probably I can tell you Photoshop is one of the best things that you can work on. So people, I can just tell you Photoshop is one of the great things to work on. Though we have a technical error today, I'm really not able to show you the Photoshop onto the screen, but yes, as much as you practice, as much good you are. So thank you so much for listening to my class. I am Krant Patnaik, and I'll be taking you with more classes on upcoming Photoshop things that we have into the class. So have a good day, and thank you so much for listening to my class.